Today's video is more of intermediate tips of how to improve and play Seer with real gameplay. We're going to cover some brief tips and go right into gameplay to review. We're going to showcase good gameplay, but we're also going to showcase in that same match not so good gameplay. The first tip, and I'm going to put a disclaimer here, fast movement makes you dizzy, skip ahead just a little bit. I'm going to put a timestamp on screen. So while the heartbeat has been nerfed, one major advice is to check your minimap. It'll turn yellow literally the second an opponent is within range. The regular heartbeat will take a moment to pulse, and when you spin, sometimes you can miss it. This is a surefire way to get a faster info if an opponent is within range, something most Seers don't pay attention to, but can also help if you spin around, and of course, if you get really dizzy, it's just an area to divert your attention away to look at the upper left-hand side of your screen rather than focusing on the center. The next tip is you need to lead your tactical on a moving opponent to hit. I'll showcase this in the gameplay within the first few minutes when we highlight it, but an internal breath of air, usually a timer within 2 seconds, to know where to land. My advice is to go in the test range, use your tactical over and over and over again just to get a feel for the timing. Also, another tip for the tactical is even though the color has turned where an opponent is within range for your tactical to be utilized, I recommend still moving up within a few meters. It's bad enough that it's easy to move left and right out of. Don't make the tactical more difficult to hit and require more precision. Move forward a little bit, because most of the time, even though you throw your tactical out, sometimes your opponent will actually back away from it on accident. So move forward, make sure that they're within that cone and within that range. So let's talk movement real quick in game. Just some quick tips and reminders to ensure you don't fall behind as you're constantly scanning an area. Now in this portion, what I want to discuss and remind you is to utilize movement. Otherwise, Seer, when he slide jump, will really still fall far behind from the group whenever you're trying to scan, because we did mention how you have to do the quick spins, and I'll slow it down just a little bit, not to make you dizzy, just to be able to scan your area. And you do that because of the mini-map tip like we provided a second ago. You can still use a super zipline jump to build yourself some momentum. I still highly recommend doing it off a wall bounce just to catch up with your team. If needed, you can also slide jump into a bunny hop, even though you do slow down. But if you're going down a hill, it's very helpful specifically to help build yourself some momentum. So just some quick tips and reminder into movement to utilize to keep up with your team, because I promise you if you keep slide jumping, you will lose a lot of velocity and you will slow down compared to the rest of your team, and it can be very difficult to keep up, especially when you're trying to do any other sort of movement tech. So just be sure you use it to your maximum ability and efficiency. Alright, so let's go into the gameplay next that I want to discuss and highlight and give you guys some real tips on how to play Seer. Now in this portion, I'm showcasing on screen that I got 17 eliminations and 4,300 damage. Now, most YouTubers, what they normally do is they cut out the bad moments where they showcase only the good moments of that specific gameplay. What we're going to do today is I'm going to highlight the moments where we succeeded as Seer, but also the moments where I made glaring mistakes as Seer, but also general movement mistakes. So landing hot initially, you got to land where the items and you're going to get your loadout. This is already a great loadout, 30-30 and R99. So I already see that there's an opponent here from scanning, so that's just a natural instinct that you should have as Seer. So one thing that I always tell people to do, and I make the mistake right here, and I want to highlight it, especially when I know there's an opponent here, this is that 50-50 fight that can really get you into trouble. So this opponent could have landed more shots, but I could have held the angle over here on the left more, either here or more on the pill cap there, just as a tip. So this is a great game, and this is where I also wanted to highlight using your tactical and moving target, specifically on opponents like Octane. So remember I told you that breath of air? This was a good moment using it because I knew that they're going to run it. I can't see them, right? But I do know where they're going to possibly land. So let's go and take a breath of air. 1, 2, hit. You have a little bit of a cone, but you got to remember where they're going to go to run. So the beauty within Seer, and you can see in the mini-map as well, in this gameplay, I didn't really use a spinning technique because we're not really playing ranked, so I'm just not necessarily worried about an opponent running up on us, and it's definitely used more for rank. This is a good beam. I play this well, just as a highlight. Seer's all about getting the information ahead of time, and once you know where an opponent is at, I play the cover very well here and dance right back and forth to ensure that I keep my hitbox small. So keeping your hitbox small and ducking and weaving is going to be probably one of the best tips you can provide. And I see there's an opponent there, and I use this area as cover. There's no reason for me to tactical here, so keep that in mind whenever you're playing. This isn't the best use of a tactical, but it does let us know where they're at, because realistically, I'm wasting time and I could have taken unnecessary damage, and I see a lot of Seers do this. And while I was learning to play Seer just a little bit more because Seer's been played a lot more here, I have this cover at least, right? But I could have taken a little bit too much unnecessary damage. Well, yes, this is 3v1. If we were to get thirded immediately, it may not be necessary to use a tactical here. Now, there's another mistake as I run up here along the building that I make. So I take my shots, and I can't really see, but for some reason, I decided to reload. I still had 9 bullets remaining, and this caustic was low HP. Now, this costed me an additional kill and additional damage. So I reload. There's no reason for me to reload. I'm not in danger. I'm not ducking and weaving through cover, and I lost the elimination here. So if you're curious why you're losing out on potential eliminations, there's unnecessary things that you are doing in encounters like that are going to cost you. So what you're going to see here next, so even though this is a rough start, and you're going to see me make another glaring mistake, it wasn't until I kind of got warmed up on the Legend. This is whenever I was deciding to play Seer and give a lot more tips, but I still had a really good game. This right here is probably one of the dumbest mistakes that you could ever do. Despite you having an advantage, one, I didn't heal up my flush heals in the bottom left. Another one is that I pretty much ego challenge. I saw this was the Octane from earlier, and I said, you know what, I'm a better player, and I'm going to ego challenge. So I missed my shots initially here, which is also a pretty big mistake. I missed 2 shots, but because I did that, I should have switched initially to the R301, but I switched a little too late. And I was trying to go for cleanup and just kind of spraying and praying, and I missed everything. That's a glaring mistake. Honestly, this was a 17 kill elimination. That I could have had 19 here, right? And I could have had way more damage, and I could have had above 4,300 damage. Imagine if I was only like 50 damage short. Well, this damage could have been it from missing your 4K. And just because I give this tip a lot, respect the enemy players that you're facing off against. Don't make the mistakes that you see that I'm making in this video, because it can cost you. Always respect every opponent that you're facing, because you never know who you're facing, really. So we see a res here. I'm going to skip ahead by 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. Keep your movement high. So you'll see that I have the scan here. They're within range, but I still miss it. Remember that this is pretty easy to move out of, especially whenever there's stairs. So another tip I'll provide, if you know that there's stairs, don't necessarily throw your tactical, because you want them on equal playing field. It's really hard to hit your tactical whenever somebody is moving up and down through elevation, because the cone is very, very specific on what it can hit. Just a little tip and advice. You pretty much have your ultimate for every single encounter. That's another tip I can provide if you're playing Seer. Use it for every single fight. If you find, especially if you're playing ranked, that your ultimate wasn't useful and you weren't able to make a push, it means you probably should rotate. You had wall hacks with your ultimate ability, but now you just weren't able to get the clutch. If you couldn't get the clutch with wall hacks literally from Seer's ultimate, you're probably not going to win the fight, and you probably should just rotate to zone. So use the Seer ultimate as a way to gauge if you're going to stay for the fight or you're going to reposition and run away. So that's another major tip. I don't see that tip being provided enough, especially in terms of rotation. It's a good way to gauge a fight. If you literally, if you spend that long, I call it Disney World. Compliments to Seer for calling that. You get this big dome. Realize after the fact that there's people that are going to see it and they're going to run up. If you spent that much time and you weren't able to clutch something out, well, just know that you're most likely going to get run up on, and it's not going to be pretty. So use that time, gauge it. So when you're playing pubs, Mari makes a mistake here, but you know, it's pubs. He lands directly on the individual player, and at one point I end up having to play quite solo here, and I'll highlight what I did well. I know initially I wasn't playing so hot here, but later you'll start to realize that I kind of got warmed up and got a better feel for what I needed to do. So taking height in that positioning is a lot better. And also when you're taking shots, don't be afraid to slow down your shot a little bit. And I see that I clutched it out finally there, even though I missed a few shots. Also, don't be afraid to take your shots. Another tip in terms of Seer is to make sure you know the terms of comms where an opponent is at. So this honestly could have costed me. And this is another mistake that most Seers will make. Try to use a mix in terms of information. Just because you see that they're through this wall, and especially if there's multi-layers, be very, very careful with what you're shooting through and the decision making that you're going to make, because you might actually it might work against you. And I've had this happen several times in ranked, and I've gotten a lot better at it since I've recorded this video specifically, because I saw these mistakes. And you're probably wondering, how do I know these mistakes? Well, it's because I VOD review. I look at my footage and I review moments that I do incorrect and moments that I'm doing well. That's how I'm able to self-assess. So if you're watching this video and you're looking at those moments, those moments is how you identify, and usually I call them like the 5-second intervals, because all it is 5 seconds. 5 seconds can make a difference between you clutching out a fight or you getting eliminated or getting potentially third-partied to move around and, you know, get in and out of dodge. So we do see there's another fight here. It's pubs, so we're just going to keep pushing everything. I'm going to skip ahead 5 seconds, another 5 seconds, another 5 seconds, and then boom. This is where my team gets eliminated. And the ultimate placement, I got better at placing my ultimates, but I'm going to showcase why this is not. This is a decent ultimate placement because it's out of range, but ideally you want to put it on the back side of the building, because right now I don't think it really picks up anybody. Well, it actually does. It would have been better placed if I threw it here instead of so far back. I mean, I can defend it, but I think just to know if there was another team behind, because you're going to see there's multiple targets, because we see that there's only one team, but there is multiple targets that are located here. So this is a decent tactical, but just doesn't snag anything, because I am shooting it from a layer down below. I have height. I don't make the mistake here of dropping, but I do need to reposition just to ensure I don't go down. This is another tip. Always play your life first and foremost. I could have used my Phoenix kit here. I would have been taken out of the fight for too long. I wanted to engage as fast as possible. There was a moment that I probably should have utilized my Phoenix kit instead, and I didn't. That's pretty much my bad and my mistake. But I used the cover here, the railing, to pretty much win this fight. Now, because there was another team, and I would have had this info if I threw the ultimate a little further, throw it like a Gibraltar bubble, right? The more you throw it like a Gibraltar bubble, the more distance and more gain you're going to get out of it, because you're looking for information. And because of Seer, regular, passive, you can look at heartbeats, but it's really hard to tell the exact number. If you throw your ultimate, at least it'll let you know the number of people in the area, and you can inform your team whether or not you're going to push. So this right here is a better use of the tactical and also repositioning to take an angle as well. So I'm putting the pressure using the tactical. Usually the best spot to use a tactical is when enemies are behind boxes, especially if you saw that they were being shot at, because most of the time when an enemy does that, from what you can see here, when I saw them move, is that they're most likely going to heal and they're trying to reposition. So whenever they use a tactical here, then boom, they usually get caught out. And that's probably that's whenever I started to realize that's a better use of the tactical overall, is making sure that you really catch them out. And when you catch them out, well, you're going to get more positive net results from your tactical, and that's what you want to do. So by myself, I would like to go back for the banner, but I also have an uphill battle. One thing I like to do in pubs specifically, even whether I'm playing with teammates or randoms, is like to try to go for banners. Whether that's good or bad, I just like to play for the team, essentially. Now, me holding here is not a bad thing, especially when I know they're there. So I move forward a little bit and I start maximizing on the tactical. So the tactical puts a lot of pressure and definitely scares opponents, just like a Bloodhound scan would. So I definitely recommend utilizing it to put that pressure that you're looking for. So you see me, I'm using good positioning here. I'm using the boxes to make sure I can try to find a nice head glitch so I can get the damage in. And they're not pushing because they think that I'm still potentially a full squad. So holding an angle and playing positioning like this can really deter an opponent from thinking that you are a full team or not. And whenever you hear the heartbeat, that's when you know they're dead center as well. That's another tip. So I hit all three right there. So I have a lot of information at my disposal, and I can tell whether they're going to move or not. Unfortunately, I did get run up here, so I had to stop this team as much as possible. But at least I can tell from the left if I do turn that they're going to be over there. So because the zone is closing, I do luck out a little bit here. I decide to take height. I don't drop all the way. I almost made the mistake here, but I throw my ult just to get a gauge of how many people are actually located within this area. So another mistake that I make here with the ultimate is that while you can see them, keep in mind the objects and obstacles that are in the way. Whenever you look here, I make this mistake because I keep shooting the tree instead, and I use my tactical to get a better feel for it, and I think I miss it here. Yep, because they still move out of it. Oh no, I actually got them. So you're going to see me shoot, but it is hard to tell whether I'm going to hit them or not, and the tree is in the way, and I keep missing those shots. See, you'll see in a minute. I just keep hitting the tree, and actually not the target. So I'm just slightly missing, and some of them are landing, but then the tree gets in the way. So use your positioning. Remember that there is going to be objects and stuff in the way. That's something I definitely learned early on. So another tip, if you're a seer, move, and I do it here a second sooner, move towards the geometry so then you can actually land your shot. But this is really good positioning because I have the jump on this enemy team quite a bit, and I'm just dealing out damage like crazy. So there's another knock as well. So I knocked 2 of them already. Now I have the information that 2 of them are gone. And I'm looking for the last one. And I tactical, but the Bloodhound, I just can't tell if it's part of the squad or not. But I don't give up height, and I could have used a Phoenix. Remember I told you my mistake from the Phoenix earlier? By the time I pop all these cells, to be honest, I probably was a little bit too paranoid, worried that I was going to get pushed, but I have all this time, and I could have used the Phoenix instead. Now, I could have also rotated a little earlier to res, but I was definitely feeling pretty confident that I could clutch this out, because what you end up seeing is, yes, I do end up clutching it out just due to sheer positioning. Remember, positioning is everything. Even if you have really good aim, positioning is going to net you bigger results. Another thing, be sure not to use your tactical when panic looting. That was a mistake that I did there. I remember calling it. I used it on an accident. I'm so used to playing other Legends like Watson where I'll pull out fences and start doing stuff. Or my Horizon where I would throw my tactical on the ground. It's just another little tip. Careful because there is a long CD when it comes to Seer. So just take note of the Legends that you're playing. So let's skip ahead. What I end up doing here is I go for the res. So I know that I can reposition to the back here. And I do keep scanning, looking for an opponent. And I do actually find out a team. So another big tip is that most people ask, why would you run Seer over Bloodhound? And Bloodhound is really strong, but Seer really has that cancel animation that comes in. And there's a bunny hop, at least movement to build momentum. And I did catch somebody out there, and then boom. So I catch them here, use my tactical, and I use the ultimate to kind of push forward just to stop a push. I don't know whether they're a team, but what starts happening here is I start to find my groove specifically with Seer. This is one of the first nights where I said, you know what, I'm going to really start to play him and really figure him out. Oh, and so the big tip, just to circle back in regards to Bloodhound, is that, well, Bloodhound, when the scan that they provide is that it screams this is your location. Seer can really provide information without revealing where they're at. And that's really important information. So this team gets completely wiped. This was a really, really great squad wipe that we had here. Now we have resources for days, essentially. And then we just pretty much move. A lot of movement, especially when it comes to Legends that don't have movement, like Seer. Any sort of bunny hopping, any sort of wall bouncing that you can do is going to be monumental because you're going to need it. I say that's why I play Horizon so well, is because of my time on Watson not having any sort of out and relying on just whatever you can to kind of inch forward, especially whenever your teammates do have mobility and they do pull ahead. So we're going to skip ahead because there's going to be another fight located up here, and we win this 2v3 as well. And this is through positioning, but also helps by having the Seer tactical. So when opponents pretty much running out in the open, that's just going to scream for free damage. We assess that, yes, they have reds, but we're getting so much damage in that this is going to be a fight to take. It's a bit aggro of a fight, but if a team that you know that you've dealt damage to, especially if you're a Seer, it can really intimidate them. Intimidation is really everything whenever you want to make a play. So throw a thermite for entry damage, and then I'm able to get a nice Seer tactical. And here's the mistake that I make right here. You never know what object's in the way. And so I think that, because it's hard to see visually, I'm shooting, but I can't really see them behind the box. And there we go, and there's the damage. So I make the mistake early on there. But just another little tip for all you Seers out there. I take the Horizon Q just because I have it, and I push forward. I trust that Sarah has her fight. And I go in and wide swing this because this red armor, we need to pretty much clean this up as quick as possible. And I go in for the elimination. So the reason I wide swing that, and the wide swing is just pretty much going out in the open without any cover, is because I know, let's say they were to get a battery, that reset time that they have and the amount of HP can be pretty difficult. So you just want to make sure that there's a moment to go for a clean trade and there's a moment not to go for a clean trade. That's a moment to go for a clean trade whenever you got a 2v1 and you've already got the crack and you got them on the ropes. If you don't have them on the ropes, you could definitely feel it because they're going to be looking around the angle faster than you will. So skip ahead a few more seconds here because we're going to go into the next fight. So far 3k damage and there's still 2 more squads, and so we do get 1,300 damage. Remember, keep your mobility high, wall bounce, keep scanning around. If you're playing ranked, do your 360 movement because you never know where people are going to appear. Because it's pubs, I keep kind of trucking along here and pushing just pretty much as far as possible. So remember I said clean trades, right? So this is a moment of not a clean trade where you know that it's not going to play in your favor, so you don't go for the clean trade. So while we do dish out a lot of damage, this Bangalore does get absolutely destroyed. She gets a lot of damage done to her, but because Sarah took a lot of damage here, and because I don't know where all their angles are, and I'm going to try to see if I can go for the elimination and they go for the bubble reset, it's not worth the push. So that push right there was really smart, because if I went for it, I guarantee it would have gotten eliminated because I don't have the information in my, essentially, corner. So I want to play that as safe as possible. So I'm playing safe. I have my ultimate. Most opponents, what they'll do is they'll back away from the Seer ultimate. So when an opponent backs away, you want to make sure to pretty much use that as an opening. So right here, this was a really good spray. This is what you call clean entry damage, pretty much signaling you to push. So when you look at it here and we go back, we'll go put in slow motion. I didn't see them initially, but I see the trail. And if you're going to trade and they're not shooting at you initially, this is a perfect trade damage because their opponent is just pretty much screaming they got beamed, and their other opponent is not less likely to push. And even if they do and they're both cracked, now we have 2 cracks and we can reposition and find an angle on this opponent. So with Seer, we know at least whenever you scan around, you can tell where opponents are at if a third party is going to appear, but we pretty much got info on where all of them are at. And because of that, we decided to go for the big rotation because the zone is going to close. And we know that there's 2 teams located in front of us. I use my tactical for a bit of pressure. And I notice that they're running away. If they're going to back away, we're going to do the same thing as well. So it's like a precise bloodhound. If you're precise as Seer, there's a lot of reward, but the downside is you have to practice on your precision when using your tactical, because if you miss it, you're literally missing out on what Seer's toolkit is. So remember how I said we were going to rotate and push over here as fast as possible? Knowing rotation is key, because what we're going to see here in a second is I catch out this poor Pathfinder. So because they're rotating, they didn't anticipate the rotation, I do wide swing this out. None of them have really their weaponry out, and none of them are really hard focusing us, and this person just ultimately does go down. So that's a big dub right there. At this point, it's about griefing who you can, trying to scan out. When people run away, they tend to run in more of a straight line. That's why I recommend that whenever you have your cone, that you have some cover the distance so they can't run away from you. So really good damage here. Good positioning. We're using the box as well. Start to really find my groove. And I eliminate them strictly because 1, extra damage for the 4K badge. And then 2, I don't want them to res. Especially if the other team rolls up and we lose track, because it does happen. So there is an enemy Seer's ultimate. The enemy Seer's ultimate does put pressure from us being able to push up right away. But I do feel like that ultimate was used a little too early, essentially. The ultimate should be used whenever you're going to make a play and make a push. And ultimately, they don't make a push. They just kind of hold. If you're using the ultimate defensively to kind of just protect your building, that's a good way to play it. But if it's a last squad, it has to be to make a push. So I'm trying to make a push here myself. I could have thrown the tactical or the ultimate a little further up, but luckily at least I know where they're all at. So I throw my tactical there, and I'm finding angles. So I keep taking low ground, but I am kind of ducking and weaving out. Seer goes for the play, goes for the push. We know one of them is isolated there, so I do a little damage there. Because this person's isolated, we decide to make a push here, and I decide to peek out. Reload, play the box again, then wide swing out and go for the kill. Now I drop bats because I have way too many, but I just go to wide swing it out and there's a dub. So when we look at this here, this was a round full of mistakes, but also full of a lot of positives that really worked well because I had it, because Seer, because of the toolkit. Could you have done this without a legend? Sure. I mean, could you have done this with Bloodhound? Sure. But specifically the information that Seer provides is just so monumental to ensuring that you can, well, clutch out and do what you need to do. I was slowing it down because I figured that I was going to see the end screen here a second sooner. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this provides better tips in terms of making so you don't make mistakes. I feel like Seer is very simple, but has a very high skill ceiling in what is simple, if that makes sense. So again, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the commentary. Hopefully it was helpful. Remember these tips. Don't make the mistakes that I made in this video. Be smart with your positioning. And I promise you, even though Seer's toolkit is literally just scan meta, and so you got your ultimate for scanning, remember to play smart and use it as a strength, and don't rely on it in some areas where I did where it was unnecessary, and use it where you need to. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.